is on, video is on. You want the closed captioning?
Yes, please.
Okay, closed captioning is on.
Thanks. All right, everybody, I will call the March 23rd Special Select Board meeting to order. The first item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So I will take a roll call for attendance real quick because we have a member on Zoom. So Karen Herrick.
Here.
Carla Bacci.
Here.
Melissa Murphy.
Here.
Karen Rose Gillis.
Here.
And Chris Haley is here. All right, so I will go over the agenda real quick. So 7:05, Town Manager candidate interview with Jane Wellman. Select Board members only will be permitted to ask questions for this item. We allowed the public to submit questions in advance that we may or may not have to ask Jane. Public comment is reserved at the end for the 8:45 time slot. At 8:05, we will have a discussion of potential appointment of Jane Wellman as town manager, and then 8:30, a discussion of potential next steps for hiring of the town manager. And then, like I said, 8:45 for public comment. So the first item is Jane Wellman's interview. Did you want to start, Jane?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have an opening statement I'd
Of
like to
course.
read.
Yep.
Thank you. Good evening to the Select Board and the residents of Reading. Thank you for inviting me here tonight to talk about this outstanding community and how I believe I can serve it well as your next town manager. Reading is an exceptional place with remarkably engaged citizens. It's managed to grow while maintaining its character, attracting thriving businesses and retaining world-class staff across all our departments. I know this firsthand because for the past 10 years, I have had the privilege of serving Reading, first as business administrator, then as director of operations, and now as your assistant and also acting town manager. Public service is both my vocation and my avocation, and as a result, my work here has been defined by excellence in in delivery of mission-critical services, from helping lead the incident command staff during the pandemic as your public information officer, to renovating our award-winning website and partnering closely with our finance director to safeguard our AAA bond rating. I have been at the table for nearly every major decision this town has made over the last decade. My leadership is rooted in disciplined creativity. I believe deeply in conservative budgeting, which is why I'm so proud that we are currently tracking under our construction budget for our recal project and the pickleball project. I also believe that responsible stewardship must be paired with innovation, especially in supporting our most vulnerable residents through, for example, tax relief for seniors and veterans. One factor that distinguishes me as a leader is my 360-degree perspective. In addition to my professional work here, I've also served 15 years of elected and appointed service as a select board member, a school committee member, and town moderator in another community. I've sat on both sides of the table. I understand the weight of the decisions you make, the intricacies of the MSBA process, the ins and outs of the CIP shift, and the unique responsibilities of representative town meeting. I completed my master's in public administration at UNH's Carsey School because I believe a town manager must use data to drive sound decision-making and policy. Ultimately, I lead with humanity. I look forward to mentoring our exceptional staff and providing the stability Reading needs during this pivotal moment. In a period of tight budgets, external stressors that we're seeing statewide and nationwide and worldwide, and major infrastructure shifts here in town, Reading doesn't need to endure a costly and disruptive search process. It needs the steady, tested leadership that I have provided and will continue to provide as your permanent town manager. I am prepared to lead with transparency, compassion, and the professional integrity that the residents of Reading expect and deserve, and I look forward to tonight's conversation. Thank you.
Thanks, Jane. So board members, real quick, did we just want to just rotate questions and go in order that way? That sounds good to everybody?
Sure.
So I will start with Karen Rose Gillis.
Do we do one question at a time?
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
preferably, unless you have a related follow-up to whatever Jane,
I don't even know which one to. What do you see as your biggest challenge moving from the number 2 spot to the number 1 spot?
So when I was as assistant, I'm advising the manager. As the manager, I'm advising the board and working with all of the boards, committees, and commissions to help you make the decisions that you need to make to drive policy in town. So it's a broader level of advisement, right? So I work with all of our departments. I have worked with all of our departments for 10 years because the nature of the different roles I've had have been across the silos, right? Fire department's a silo, police department's a silo. So I've always worked across all of the different departments. And I have great relationships with all of our department heads. But in this role, I have to have a little bit deeper and broader understanding of what each department head needs versus, just what's going on in the assistant town manager role. So ways I've started doing that already are sitting down with our department heads, grabbing lunch, going over, to their offices, going to them and saying, what is it that you need? What are your priorities? What's happening for you? What do I not understand? Let's talk about what collective bargaining is going to look like in the coming months, because that's coming up for next year. So it's those kinds of things, going broader and deeper into what each department is doing and being able to bring forward the data and the information that you need to be able to make your decisions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Melissa?
Thank you, Jane. Do you have any thoughts or ideas on ways to alleviate some of our budget concerns over the next year?
Sure. That's an easy question. Thanks for that. Wonderful. That's a problem we're all going to have to solve. So Reading has a good tradition, right, of grant funding. And we are continuing to work on grants and earmarks. That work has started and will continue. And we have some staff that are really tremendously talented. Andrew McNichol in particular is tremendously talented in writing grants. And I've already been talking to members of our delegation, even earlier today, to talk about grant opportunities and making sure that these are the folks that are getting them and that I'm getting them. So grants help, but they're not going to solve problems. Other ways, if you were to appoint me, some things I might be doing are restructuring our staffing. So I'm not talking about layoffs at all. I'm talking about, like right now, we're currently not filling some open positions. We would continue that. We would maybe look at attrition and not backfill certain positions. And then we would move people around strategically and do a little bit more. An example of this is when I moved from business administrator to become director of operations and took on another full-time job. That was 2 full-time jobs, and I took all of that on. And so we did that with the addition of an executive assistant at the time. So being able to kind of do some of those things would be part of where I would go, because most of our operating budget is in people. Your government is people. And so most of our budget is tied into people. Other things that we've done already, we're working on our health insurance right now to see if we can achieve any savings. We've already pressed our property and casualty insurance company to give us greater savings that reflect our favorable loss ratios. And so that resulted in 8% savings, or about $178,000 off our budget next year. So those are some of the things that we're looking at. There are other things that we can do as well. One thing I did in my role when I was on the school committee 150,000 years ago, it wasn't quite, it was about 2009, 2010, so it was the Great Recession. We had realized that we were undercounting our residents that were qualified for free and reduced lunch. So our poverty level was artificially high. It's not really applying here, but just to give you a demonstration. So what we did is we incentivized parents to fill out the free and reduced lunch application, because that's part of the Chapter 70 formula at the time. And we entered everybody in a contest to receive an iPad, which was highly, highly controversial in the moment back in 2009, 2010. That's playing the long game. That's strategic. We did that effort. We had staff from our food services department at those parent nights helping parents fill out forms that, okay, sure, I'll do this. You know, you're not going to do it, but if somebody helps you do it, and it's written in microdot, you know, that worked. And that resulted in millions of dollars more coming into the town through the Chapter 70 formula. So looking at those things and looking down the road, I'm not looking 6 months, I'm looking a year, 2 years, 3 years. Where do we see that payoff? And how can we, you know, adjust those levers of government and make the system work for us? I'm not saying that particularly application, but that is something that we did in Tewksbury, and that was very much pushing that at the time.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you
very much.
Carlo?
Can I ask a follow-up, but not my question for right now?
As long as it's quick, I can.
It's quick. All right. Thank you for that answer. So to follow up on Melissa's question, and part of your answer was, we're not laying off anyone right now. If an override fails, is that an option?
Yes, absolutely. If an override fails and we cannot fund our budget, most of your budget is in people. One thing you will learn about me, if you haven't figured it out already, is I will always tell you the truth. And I'm not going to sugarcoat things. And the truth is, if we come to a point where FY28 is the pinch point, we are not unique. I don't know if there's somebody that has an override question. I don't want to go totally down that road unless you want me to, but
Not yet.
yes, sir. So yes, in the future, layoffs may have to be a factor. I would like to avoid that because we have tremendous staff who bring a lot of institutional memory. They do really good work, and I'm very proud and privileged to work with everybody I work with. That being said, I think attrition is the ideal way to recognize those savings.
Thank you for that honest answer. And now a fun question for me.
Thank you.
I've said several times over public meetings, how can we make Reading a destination? Because we have Route 28 going through downtown. We have a great downtown. As far as I can tell, we're 100% occupied in our retail storefronts. But what would you do, or do you have any recommendations or ideas to make Reading more of a destination than a cut through?
Yeah, Reading is a cut through partly because of our fantastic location at, you know, the intersection of these two highways, 93 and 95. We're a destination as an aspirational community for people to want to live in. And we need to make sure that we're always keeping that in mind. And I say this a lot, in a time when your zip code determines how long you live, and the life expectancy in Reading is average 81, 82 years old, among the highest in the country. Also, that's most of northeastern Massachusetts, but that's true for here. You know, we have to make sure that we're protecting that benefit, that people who invest in our community are getting the services they're looking for. And, you know, how long you live is a big part of that. So I find that very important. It's part of like, what's your shareholder value when you manage a business? What is your homeowner, your resident value? So Reading is a destination for where people want to live. But to come and visit, come spend your money here, I think part of that is looking at how we have interesting and unique community events and partnering with our community organizations that help put on some of those events. So it's not just like robust business, right? People come to Jordan's from all over the state because it's a great business and it's unique. I don't know if you've heard, but Trader Joe's is also coming here soon. Maybe
I think I heard that.
Heard about that. And so that's a fun, exciting benefit for the residents in town, but a lot of residents in neighboring communities will be coming here for that too. So how do we get them to come here and spend more money? You know, it's making it easier for businesses to start here. And we've started that work in my department in a couple of ways. I've worked with department heads to make it easier for permitting. We have a new building commissioner who's already working with our IT department to make our permit process not only easier, but more interdivisional. So if you have this kind of a project going on, but really the health department also has a piece in this, that's kind of wrapped into the system and how that workflow is. That's really inside baseball stuff, but that's what makes it easier for businesses to just go through the process. Secondly, I've asked our economic development director to act as the go-between between businesses and our permitting system, and working with those individuals to find out if it's starting a new business, it's hard. You don't know all the regulations. You don't know what you don't know. So helping as an usher to move them through the process and keep them fully informed and make sure that there aren't surprises. One of my ethics is no surprises. So that's another way, making it easier for businesses to come here. They talk to each other. People talk, businesses talk, and, if Reading is an easier place to set up a business and to feel supported by your community, that the people in town hall care about your business being successful, and that the people at the top in your leadership are put in a position to support that, then more people want to do that. And then, as I said about community organizations, Fall Street Fair brings in a lot of people. That's tremendously popular. And we have done a lot to support that in the past, to support their work there. But that's getting, they have a lot of expenses related to that too, and the town takes on some of those as well. So being able to balance that. The beer gardens we had on the Common were a fun thing and brought in a lot of people.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jane. Karen?
Thank you. Thank you, Jane, for being willing to step up as acting town manager. It's doing two jobs is a lot, so I appreciate your doing that. So I'm looking at a community who is in the process of building two major buildings. And in fact, one of our architects said, we're not really prepared to do this. And what he meant was staffing. And I recently met a South Shore town manager who was using an owner's project manager that we are using that does not have a permanent occupancy permit for an elementary school after 3 years of service. So my eyes are wide open, even though we're not even in the thick of it yet, that these projects are not only transformational, but they literally could break us. So what I'm wondering about, what you have done very well in your role has been a hugely strong assistant town manager for Matt, but there is no way that this town can survive without a town manager and assistant town manager both being very active and engaged and not necessarily being in the same place at the same time, but leveraging each other's strengths. So I'm wondering, what is your vision for if you were to be appointed by the board? How would you approach the hiring of an assistant town manager, knowing that we will not be necessarily expanding staff given the fiscal circumstances, and knowing that there are two buildings, a pickleball project, an override, and any other number of things that we haven't accomplished yet. So for the next town manager, they have a really full plate. So you need a right-hand person to help you out. So I'm wondering about your thoughts.
Thank you, Karen. That's a fantastic question. I appreciate the question. So when I applied for assistant town manager, it was a public search. It was a fully, public search, and we had, I think, 6 or 7 people on that search committee doing the interviews and so forth. So it was a robust interdepartmental process, and it was competitive. And I prevailed in that, and I thought that was a good process to have, as stressful as it was. I would do the same thing for an assistant town manager here. I also would take a little bit of time to think about what skills does that assistant town manager need to have to complement mine. They should not necessarily be the same skills. So I think you're right, Karen. I agree with you. They should be complementary, and they should be able to fill in areas that I don't have necessarily expertise on. And so I would think about that, and I would rewrite the job description to kind of include some of those areas that I'm not a particular expert in, or where I could use buttressing. I do intend, as town manager, to stay lead on these building projects. I would I've enjoyed that role. I've enjoyed the project work very much, actually. And I'm grateful that Matt allowed me to have those roles on those projects. We aren't messing around. We're very serious about how we do these things. Our OPMs know very well where I stand on issues, and I hold them accountable, and I call them up, and have difficult conversations. I've never had a problem having a difficult conversation. I don't like them, but I will have them. And I work very well with our OPMs. In fact, our OPM on Recal, I've worked with him. This is our third building that I've built, because he did 2 buildings in Tewksbury. Just happened that way. I wasn't on the search committee to find that contract, to make that decision. So it was a lucky happenstance. But so to get back to your question, I would have a competitive process for assistant town manager, and I would post that. And I would take some time, and with board input as well. That would be very valuable from you, Karen, and from all of the board members to see what would you like to see in an assistant town manager, what would be valuable. And then, if there's somebody internally that would fit that role and rises to the top of that process, is there a way to retool inside further? And I think that there might be, but we have to see what that search process brings forward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jane. So my question is related to Recal. So how would you plan to address the funding and staffing shortfall that we've seen percolating regarding the Recal building and the staffing and the budget and everything else that's going to have to go along with that? I know we've seen numerous meetings where Council on Aging members have come to requesting funds and all of those various aspects, but there is a significant shortfall beyond $25,000 that is bubbling up here. So what is your ideas to kind of address that looming issue that's on the horizon?
So most of the staff, we had a meeting actually earlier today about part-time staff that we might need to hire for the Recal Center to help, have those longer hours and enable us to have those rental incomes. And most of those costs, actually all of the part-time costs, would be offset by our recreation revolving fund. And so the programs that we offer will fund that staffing. So I'm not worried about the Recal related staffing. And we can augment some of what we're doing with volunteer costs. The real budget concern is how facilities funds that budget, how they are funded, because they need, their request is for 2 full-time custodians and a maintenance tech person. Plus there'll be an increase in utility costs because it's a larger building. And there will be an increase in cleaning, overnight cleaning, and all of the related contracts that we have that support building services. So we'll see those increases in costs. Some of that will be offset with rental income, which now we're projecting highly conservatively at $211,000. So that helps, but it doesn't solve our problem. Going into FY28, so we've been starting the work for FY28 for Recal last December. And so we built the FY27 budget, and we're looking at the FY28 budget. The Recal budget does not include right now more programming costs, programming funds for, actually that's not true. It does increase our programming funds. We have that on our budget. We're bringing this to you tomorrow. But it's not going to be everything's for free. Mm-hmm. We're not going to be able to offer that model. We've been privileged to be able to do that through ARPA funds. And using one-time funds to fund recurring costs is always a slippery slope, because once that funding goes away, now you've cliff funded, and you're at a point where what are we going to do with this cliff? And the town's been very supportive of other cliff-funded project individuals. We have some staffing that's been funded by ARPA. And so the town's funded those people. And like I said before, people are government. Your government is your people. And so we can provide more by having that staffing remain. So we can go forward with the staffing we have. We can hire part-time staffing with our recreation revolving account, and we can earn more money through the programs that we offer. We have to be able to sell those programs. We have to be able to rent that space on weekends and in evenings to augment that cost and to help offset some of those expenses. And continuing to look for savings and having those conversations. So the numbers that you saw, that's the level 1 budget, right? I talked at the finance committee meeting about, in the past few years, we haven't really been talking about what level 1 budgets are. What are the department requests? Because we've said, gee, we have to use this much money for free cash. We want you to come back with a 2.5% or 3% increase or whatever it is. So we're starting our budgeting process as department heads, kind of, this isn't what we're looking for. This is level funded or level service. So what you saw and what our request is right now as we go through this process is that level 1 budget. And if we don't pass an override, in the future, if the select board doesn't call for one, or you do and it doesn't pass, then we'll have to revise down that request. You have to cut your garment in the shape of your cloth. I know this seems like I'm from Maine, we have some quaint sayings. That one's PG, but they aren't all. But yeah, we'll cut our garment in the shape of our cloth. We will use other innovative methods.
In the 2 positions that you mentioned, is any of that shared with Kellum, or is it just strictly recal?
No, that is
for the maintenance aspect that you were mentioning.
So, that's a great question. So the way, and I've talked with Joe Huggins extensively about his staffing plan. Right now, facilities is managing 1.1 million square feet of building space. And they're doing that with 4 maintenance tech people right now. So that is a work order. I need something fixed. I need light bulbs changed. I need carpets fixed. I need, these are carpentry issues, electrical issues, certain other skills that have to be done in-house. And so being able to fill those work orders is usually, and then sometimes it takes a long time. So he's needed another maintenance tech for a while, and the recount will push him over. He may need a second maintenance tech for the Killam School when it becomes operational. That's the request. Mm-hmm. That's the level 1 request. So that may not be possible, but he's telling us the information that we need so that we fully understand what it's going to take to run these buildings. Right now, we have a full-time custodian that moves between this building, the police department, the fire department, and the Pleasant Street Center, and does all of those custodial works. And then we have evening crews that come in overnight to do the cleaning in the public spaces. The library has full-time custodian. So Joe's model is like, this building is going to be open for, long days, and we need to have that coverage because we're moving rooms around. We want to make sure that we're maintaining that building in the condition it should be maintained in, and that's his level 1 request. But if we don't get there, then we'll have to conserve there.
Thanks, Jane. Karen Rose Gillis.
Question is, what do you feel makes a good town manager, or better yet, what makes an excellent town manager? And does administrative experience or experience working in the town make a difference?
Yes. Yes. To the second part of the question, I think working in a municipality makes a difference. I think there are a lot of laws, there are a lot of, practices and regulations and your charter, and it's not for the, for just it's not an outsider who, runs a local business is going to have a really big lift. It's going to be a really big fire hose they're drinking from to step into the role of a town manager. It is professional management. I believe in professional management. And I have believed in professional management since I was first elected to school committee and saw, how much detail there is in running schools. I think a good town manager, an excellent town manager, is a really good listener. And they listen to their staff, and they listen to their residents, and they listen to their boards. They listen to their leaders and synthesize that information to come up with solutions, because they know how everything works inside town hall, and they go to this person and say, what about this? Can we do this? What about this? Can we do this? And that's what I try to be. But, one of my ethics is how do we get to yes? How can I make this thing happen? How can we get to yes? And we know what certain constraints we're dealing with, and then we work through that problem. We had a group of people that raised some money and wanted to have a pickleball courts. And I sat down in a meeting with the RPPA and talked with them about that. And then we started that project. How can we make that happen? And with a lot of effort and donations on their part and the community believing in that project, we're going to break ground on it in a few weeks. So I think you have to listen. I think you have to be curious. I think an excellent town manager is curious. Why? Why are we doing that? Why does this make sense? If someone comes to me and says, and this is like a pet peeve, if they come to me and say, this is the way we've always done it, my first response is going to be, well, then it's probably time to change that. Just because if we were doing everything the same way we did 20, 30, 40 years ago, we would never get anywhere or do anything. We can do new things. We can do hard things. I think that excellent town managers are people who are comfortable with being uncomfortable. It's something I tell my kids all the time. It's career advice. Get uncomfortable. I will tell you a secret. I used to be terrified of public speaking. No, like terrified. I was in high school. I couldn't stand standing up in front of my class and reciting a poem. You know, this is like the stuff nightmares are made of, right? I spoke at my high school graduation. I gave one of the speeches. I constantly say yes and figure it out later. This has gotten me into trouble, like running for office or speaking at an MMA thing. Like, why did I say yes to this? What am I going to talk about? And but it's an ethic. Say yes and figure it out later. Get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Because when you're comfortable in that uncomfortable place, you can do things that other people find uncomfortable. Like I said, I'm happy to have a difficult conversation. Look for opportunities inside the challenges. So I think those are some of the things. Be comfortable, say yes. How do you get to yes? With reason, with constraints. We know about budgets. I'm not saying that. Be curious and listen. Have an open door policy.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I could keep going. I'm a long talker, so you gotta jump in. Gotta jump in.
I won't cut you off, Jane. Melissa.
We all know that there's a lot going on in Reading with the building projects and, budget stuff. But what do you think the top 3 priorities are for Reading over the next 6 to 12 months?
6 to 12 months.
Yes.
Okay. I thought you were going to say longer distance. Top 3 priorities. Well, bringing in our projects on time and under budget, right? So one of our projects will finish within 12 months. One will finish a little longer than that. And then the other one will be a year and a half. Keeping close control of those projects. Another example of that is making sure we have builder's risk. That's, again, inside baseball stuff, but if we're insuring, it's the town and we're insuring our property, and I want to be the policy holder on that. I want the town to be the first paid if anything goes wrong. So looking for things like that. I think putting the select board, and I've already started this work, as you know, putting the select board in the best position to understand what's coming with FY28 and having the data you need to make those decisions that you're going to need to make. Because I've sat in your seat. I understand what that's like. I want to be able to support you to make these decisions. And the staff wants to support you to make these decisions. So that's a big priority for me. And that's why I requested a retreat early in May. I know everybody wants to have more input into what does our capital program look like? What are we looking at for FY20, et cetera. So positioning the board and putting us in the right place to, if the board decides to have an override, when that will be, how we're going to message it. And I've done this before in 2018 with a successful override, and I know how we were not successful in 2017, and I have that analysis, so we can do it. So that's, financial planning is important, and then the third priority is working with staff to make sure that our staff is supported. They're getting what they need. They're not working to burn out. I don't want our staff to do that. We have great staff. So that's, and if I could add a fourth, it would be looking, and I'm going to add a fourth. I'm just going to do that. It would be looking at how are all of these things we're doing over here the building project, looking at the budget. How is that impacting our more vulnerable residents? Because they come in and sit with me and say, I'm having difficulty paying my taxes. I don't know how to solve this problem. And as our assessor's office will know, I'll drive them nuts with, what about this? What about this? What can we do? And I'll come to you for solutions as well. Can we increase the cap for income limits for our volunteers, for our senior tax workers? Can we do this? I'll support our assessor when he's going to the state looking for senior tax relief, things like that. So that would be my fourth piece.
Awesome. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Carlo?
Thank you. One's going to be like a yes or no, a simple question. And these questions are coming from my colleague, Ed Ross. I thought it'd be only fair to, since he was nice enough to come.
I see how it is.
Nothing was predetermined. So on your vision board, did you aspire to be a town manager? That's more of the yes or no question.
Yes.
Yes,
Do
okay.
you want the backstory on that?
A little bit color.
Little color?
Sure. Little color.
A little color.
Little
All right.
color,
So,
little color.
so 10 years ago, almost exactly, I started working here. It was February 29th. So if you're technical, maybe it's only been 2.5, I don't know years. But leap day, I started in Reading. And that was a major career shift, right? I was coming from being a newspaper editor and who bought my ink by the tractor trailer load and wrote stories and knew everything, not everything, but I understood really deeply how government works for somebody who was an outsider through my elected service, but also when you have to explain a CIP shift. Anyway, you see how that works. And at that time, I had just gotten divorced and I was raising 2 kids and I was figuring some things out. And I had the privilege of being able to start a new career here and a lot of encouragement from other town managers that I knew. And I said, in 10 years, I want to be a town manager. That's my goal. And so over the time and through progressive responsibility and getting my master's degree and putting myself in uncomfortable positions like speaking at different things and being finalists in other communities, that was always a goal. So
Ed, good? All right, thank you.
thanks, sir.
Thank you. So I guess again, also coming from Ed submitted a lot of great questions, so I'm going to give him credit. What, if anything, you would do differently as a town manager from the previous town manager?
That's a hard question because Matt and I are very different leaders and we complemented each other well. Matt was the person in the room and I would look at him and like, can I go? And he would be like, yes. And I would take over the meeting or he let me do that because he had the knowledge and the background information. We spent a lot of time strategizing over things. And Matt was a fantastic mentor and gave me a lot of latitude. So what would I do different than Matt? I would try to be like Matt with the way he managed our staff in a lot of ways, which was not micromanaging people and letting them succeed and supporting them in their roles. Unlike Matt, I don't love the bylaw committee stuff and the charter stuff. He loved the legal stuff and he did that. And I don't love that. I mean, I follow the rules, but that's a tough one. So I think things like that, I'll need some support on. And I've already talked with our town clerk about continuing her work on bylaw. She's fantastic. But some of those things, I'm not a good poet, it turns out. I did some chat GPT poetry once I did put it on Facebook. People come shopping downtown. It was cute. I thought it was cute. Fidel asked for that. But I will try to lead with humor, and I'm kind of a little bit of an extrovert, just a little bit of an extrovert. So I'll be at a lot of things, but I'm fine jumping in front of the crowd and
Taking the mic.
maybe a little bit. You might have to take it back from me, but no. So.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Karen Eric.
Thanks. I'm just thinking about some of the we talked about the big picture. We've got to get an override defined, and I think this conversation tonight is starting to show us what might be the driver of an override. Properly financing elder human services and our new two new buildings, for example. But I'm a little concerned about I understand the staff is extremely hardworking and talented, and I have never thought we were overstaffed at town hall. So I'm starting to be concerned with important things that are starting to get gummed up. We've talked extensively about Matera Cabin being closed since September, and we have talked about a budgeting process that ran out of programming funding for elder human services 3/4 of the way through the year. And you and I have talked about, we now have Green Communities grants funds, but nobody's really had a chance to actually get any projects into that project. So where's I going with this? I guess, so how would you approach some of those things a little differently? So that's kind of, when it gets back, some of that is, I guess my question relates to staff development. We've had, it's been a revolving door in the building department, and hopefully we can get some stability there, and I think that'll help. But the fact that Matera Cabin is still closed is really concerning. And then when we have residents concerned because they think they're hearing comments that maybe in elder and human services, we don't have enough facility with strong budgeting. So how would you as town manager address resident concerns about that, things like that?
Okay, thank you. What I also heard you starting to go down the road is a little of our services being affected because we don't have all of our, we're not fully staffed right now, or there might be a little bit of that. So I heard that too. Okay. Those are great questions. Yes, if we lose staff through attrition, it will affect services. So as we go forward and look at an override, that's one of the things we'll put forward to the select board is, this is how, if it passes, this is what will be here, this is what will increase. If it doesn't pass, this is what we will lose. And we will have to do that analysis and bring that forward. Yes, I agree with you on Matera Cabin. We now have a new building commissioner who jumped in on that project. And we have started that contract that the board gave us some appetite for, and the permanent building committee appropriated the money for, so they can find out what's going on with Matera. We know what the problem is with Matera, and just to take a brief detour down that road, Matera Cabin was a gift to the town. Improvements were made to that building. The value of the improvements were about $800,000, but they were done mostly by volunteers and the Northeast Metro Tech students, and for the most part. And the use of the building was never changed from residential. For whatever reason, we don't know why it was never changed. But when the preschool, Montessori school wanted to come in, we had to look at the use of that building, and the use didn't match, and therefore it's not up to code. And so now, as an owner of this property, we have to decide what is to code. And we can't go backward, which is why the building is still not usable for the public. Once we know more, we have to do better. And so we can't unwind that. We can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. We have to go forward, and we make sure that we follow the code. So that's what's happening with Matera. We have a sense of what needs to happen. We need a budget for how much that is actually going to cost us. And professionals don't speculate. We do the work, we do the analysis, and we come back. We're not going to spend taxpayer money without having a really good sense of, what we're really needing to do. So now we do have the building commissioner there. We're starting to talk about long-term staffing in that department, if they're going to be making changes as we see some retirements coming down the road. So those conversations have already begun. Elder and Human Services programming money, in part ran out because ARPA funds have run out, and because we haven't charged for any programming in years. And prior to COVID, I think we had $25,000 in that department for expenses. It's at $51,000 now. Is that enough right now? Inflation's real, and programs cost money. So we are reinstituting programming costs. We knew this was coming. Last year, town meeting approved the Elder and Human Services revolving fund because we were looking ahead at what was coming, and we understood, so that we could use that revolving fund to pay our vendors and manage that process. So that work has begun as well. But yeah, I mean, do we want to fund more for Elder and Human Services? Do we want to do more for conservation? Conservation Commission really wants to be able to do more of their work. What's going to happen with with our school department? What kind of services they need? What are they holding back on? What do they need to fund? Police and fire are approaching fully staffed, and they have recruits in the academies and so forth, but they're in a really good place right now. We want to be able to maintain that, because when we have people in the academy, we don't have people on the street, it drives up overtime costs, and we're really trying to, that's a really big concern. Our police chief will be presenting a presentation at town meeting about what's going on with overtime costs, but they're real. We have to put people on the street. We have to protect people. There's a lot of factors there. But yes, because we've been doing level services budgets for a number of years, we've been able to stretch out that 2018 override a lot longer than the 3 to 5 years it was going to last, and a lot of that is from grant funds from the federal government through COVID. But those days are over, and we're not in the position many of our neighbors are. Winchester, Arlington, both failed their overrides this weekend. So there are also external pressures we have to be mindful of, with the cost of fuel going up. That may impact a lot of our projects that have paving. So, those are things that we're watching very closely. We're very glad to be under budget and on time with all our projects, and we keep our contingencies. We don't spend them, so that we're prepared for when there are externalities that we can't predict.
Thanks, Shane.
I have a quick little follow-up.
Yeah.
So just getting back to elder services, because, and
Yep.
we knew ARPA was running out.
Yep.
We did approve a budget, and the ball got dropped anyway. Like, if you had to just, and this isn't to like point the finger at people, because, this is a real world and things happen, and as long as we're fixing problems and moving forward, it's not a problem. But that's a budget falling apart. Like, that doesn't happen. Like, the town manager may come back to us, and the town accountant may come back to the finance committee and say, ugh, we just got the health numbers. Or snow is a great example.
Yeah.
Nobody ever knows what snow is going to be. So we've been lucky, and then this year it completely throws our budget out of whack.
That's true.
But the Elder Human Services budget just running out of money, that's a little different. So anyway, we certainly don't want that happening in the future. Are we any closer to finishing the interview process for the senior center director? Because maybe that was, when the budget was created, like it just had a hole in it.
If I could, Karen, I think we're getting a little off topic. It's a question for
All right,
Jane.
so let me wrap this up then. What will we be doing with the elder and services budgets, or what will you be doing differently so that no department ever has to find out that they're out of money like 9 months into the fiscal year? Thanks.
That's a great question. I think that with Elder and Human Services, we could have instituted paid programming earlier. I think that's probably what we should have done. We should have done paid programming last fall. and then eased into it instead of keeping it free for as long as we could and then returning to a paid program, because it was paid programming prior to COVID, prior to ARPA funds. And so I think that's probably what we should have done. And the decision that we made was, let's reduce the burden for as long as we can. Let's keep it free for as long as we can. And the better answer would have been, let's start the paid programming earlier. Our projections, this isn't a surprise. We knew this was coming. We did communicate that through our Council on Aging and through our the meetings that the two different the interim director and the previous director had with the Council on Aging. These are, like I said, we passed the Elder and Human Services Revolving Fund last spring. So I think the better way would have been to start charging for programming earlier. But I think our department heads generally do a very good job with their budgeting. Snow and ice is terrible this year. That I will give you that. It was, and that's normal. The state doesn't want us to fund all the way to what snow and ice could ever be. It's the only account you're allowed to run a deficit. So.
Thank you. I do agree with you. This doesn't happen very often. So it was just surprising. Thank you for that honest answer. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Shane. So my next question would be, obviously one of the more significant issues that propped up last year was the MBTA turn back track scenario and how that all transpired. And, you know, it came as a shock to some, and it might even have been the prior year before that kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's hard to keep track how long this has been going on. So can you describe any lessons learned or missteps that would be beneficial for the future on kind of related transportation projects around, you know, how that all unfolded?
So I think we've demonstrated very clearly that state agencies aren't fabulous or really even interested in communicating downstream to localities. We're seeing that right now with the fourth lane project on the highway. And when I happened upon that because I have a Google alert for anything ready, and it came up that way. And then I went back to the state and I notified our, managers in Wakefield, in Stoneham, who also had not had any communication, and our delegation and the board to say, this is coming. We didn't know about it. Can we have some conversation around this? Can you talk with us, and our public safety officials and our engineers and so forth? So they've been more responsive since then. So I think the lesson learned is we have to watch them really closely. And we have to work very closely with our legislative delegations so that they're communicating that to us as well. I'm close with Rich Haggerty. I've known him for a long, long, long time. I worked for his family's company. So he and I have been colleagues in the past, and I'm privileged to be able to say that I count him as a friend. But we have to work with our delegations. We have to keep an eye on all these agencies. We have to make sure that we're going to the things that we're supposed to be going to. In my past life, I have been the chair of a regional planning agency, the chair of NIMCOG, which also allowed me to sit as a voting member on a regional transportation agency. We're part of the MBTA, right? That was, when I was in Tewksbury, that was part of the LRTA. So I understand how those systems work. There's an MBTA advisory board meeting tomorrow. It's on my calendar. I went to the last one. I'll go to this one. I'll continue to go to these and keep an eye on what's happening deep inside these agendas that are impenetrable. I mean, you start looking for things, it's very hard to find out what's going on unless you're an insider. So we met with the Office of the Inspector General earlier this year. And I talked with him about a culture for the MBTA that is not collaborative with communities. They're broken as an agency and they're trying to be better. And I'm glad for that. But there's a lot of work to do there, and they have cultural issues there. And that's what they're dealing with, but we're going to have to be mindful of that as we go forward and adjust our behavior appropriately.
I will say, after you had brought that up, I did see it mentioned multiple communities after the fact. So if you are the one who truly brought that to them, I thank you, because it is all over the place now with Wilmington and Wakefield and all that.
Yeah, we started putting it out on our social media as well.
Thank you. Karen Rose Gillis.
Thank you. How can the select board better support you as town manager?
I love that. I love that question. Communication. I told you, open door policy, come in and talk to me, or I'll come meet you, right? And I don't get nearly the exercise I'm supposed to, it turns out. And so I love a walk and talk. I love a walking meeting. And, the weather's getting better, so this is the time. But yeah, just, what's on your mind? What's happening with you? What are your concerns? And not save that for the meeting. Let's have the conversation. Give me some time to maneuver. I like I've said before, I don't like surprises. We have enough surprises that come up all on their own, it turns out. And so what we can do to control and communicate so that I understand the board's needs, and have those conversations and then be able to work on that with staff is important and report that back to you. I think the conversation in the meeting is for the public benefit, right? The public benefits from having disagreement here in this room and agreement in this room and the discourse that happens. But the work doesn't happen in the meetings. This is just where we report out what we're doing. The work happens all the other days. That's the day job. The night job is reporting out what we're doing and being able to talk to folks. So the board being able to communicate to me what you're looking for, and then I can go back and work with you to and then manage competing needs. Not everybody's going to agree on everything. How do we come to consensus? What information is needed? Where do we need to engage the community? And then when we engage the community, having the board support us. I want you, when we did the override in 2018 and we did all that data, I met with every single select board member at the time and told them what my analysis was, told them what I would be saying in public. And then we had a joint meeting with the school committee and the select board, and I told everybody what I was going to say, but the public heard it for the first time, and I showed them the data. So that kind of thing. Let's sit down, let's talk about it, let's engage the community, and then having that support to know that I can speak freely, that I can do the things that I need to do with your support and take risks, if we, understood risk, but being able to take risks and not, and know that the board's going to be there to back me up. That's an important thing.
Thank you.
Melissa?
Thank you. So you've sat on this side of the aisle, I guess, and now you're on that side. But how do you think that I know that you've already been in these positions, but how do you think you'll handle misinformation and or highly emotional public meetings?
How will I handle misinformation and highly emotional?
Misinformation that's, in a meeting. Is there a way that you think that you could correct the information? And when those meetings become highly emotional, which we've seen recently, how do you think it's best to handle that?
So those are great questions. Those are tough meetings. As a select board member, if I thought I was correct in or I was getting it wrong, which happens from time to time, I would usually look to the manager. Am I correct in this? So I'd give the manager an opportunity to weigh in on a topic. And that's a wonderful segue to be like, well, actually, there's a little detail maybe you didn't know, or maybe there's this little piece. And so it's a non-confrontational way to still say what you're thinking, still say what you're feeling. Is this correct? And if the manager doesn't know, let me get back to you tomorrow. Let me get that information and come back with you for that. Like, I don't know the answer to that. Not going to know everything. We prepare as best we can coming to the meeting, but we don't know everything. So, but having that opportunity come back to the manager is good. I can interject, and say, Mr. Chairman, I tend to be, or Ms. Chairman, I tend to be pretty formal in meetings, you may have noticed, and direct my comments to the chair, through you to Ms. Murphy, that kind of thing. Because that's a very good way to keep order, and just always direct the comments to the chair filters them, asks for answers and responses. So I can interject and interrupt, which I don't love to do. But, to prevent misinformation from getting out there, that's important. So that's an area to work on. When things are getting emotional, that's tough. That's really tough. I think if we're communicating amongst ourselves better, well, you with me, not violating open meeting law, but you with me, then it's easier to kind of see, oh, maybe this is this thing, right? Maybe this thing is actually something that, no, there's more to it than this. Let's not deal with that now. Let me talk to you tomorrow or something like that. If we have, somebody who's here at public comment who's distraught about something, talk to me tomorrow. I'll call you tomorrow. What's your phone number? Like, let's get in touch. Let's de-escalate. And I'm happy to bring the resources and solve problems. So.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you.
Carlo?
Thank you. So 4 years ago, when Fidel got hired, didn't know him from a hole in the wall, and he became town manager. And one of my first conversations with him was, how do we get Dennis to the table? Market Basket.
Right, Dan.
Dennis, the owner of Market Basket.
Thank you.
And I know Eastern Gateway is a big vision, which to me is many, many, many years in the making. I know we're going to vote on the zoning, but I guess that property is there. It's not fully occupied. It's underutilized. It's a great location. What would you do or offer that property owner to get him to activate that property?
Well, we've engaged with Mr. Dennis previously. I met recently with other developers in our area. He's on my list. I haven't gotten to him yet in the last 3 weeks, but I will. He's reached out to us on other matters, most recently on Market Basket. So I think a part of it is an introduction, sitting down and talking about what his future goals are and where he wants to be in the future, and what he sees as a vision for his property there. And I can't speak for him or what he wants to do, but what I can do is assure him that the town is interested in how we responsibly use land, how we develop land for the future, and we're taking the long view on Eastern Gateway. We're not looking at 6 to 12 months or 5 years. We're looking at what is this whole region going to look like for 30, 40, 50 years. It's going to unlock all of your new growth for generations. So we have to get it right, and we have to put the time in to work with all of these landowners over there and be really smart about it.
Can I just follow up on that?
Yes.
Thank you. No, I those are all the right answers, but what I'm trying to get more, where Eastern Gateway is so far off in the future, is how, I know you'll meet with this person if appointed, but as Fidel did, and then it kind of, I don't want to say fell by the wayside, but both parties have to be interested.
Okay.
Both parties have to be swimming in the right direction. So I guess what I would like to see a new town manager try as hard as they can to bring them to the table with the planning department, with economic development. Like you said, what do you need? What can we do for you that's reasonable? Like I don't think in the plans there was a hotel over there. That's a great location for a hotel. He has the land, he has the property, it adds to our tax base, doesn't add to our schools, doesn't add to our senior population. So these are things that I think need to be pushed aggressively as much as we can. But if they're not going to talk, they're not going to talk.
Yeah.
But I think we have to look at ways of incentivizing / accommodating as best we can within our limits, because I know the whole property is being looked at, but to me, that one is one property owner, a lot of acreage, and let's try to get something done.
Yeah, I concur.
Thanks. Karen Herrick. Still on mute.
Yeah. Sorry, I had a couple of screens going. I guess the other thing that we've been discussing internally is a thorough review of our fiscal policies and perhaps an expansion. And I think you alluded earlier that the select board and residents have been asking for more input into capital planning. So do you have any previous experience that would be helpful for these kind of tasks going forward?
For capital planning or for bringing
Fiscal
people
policy
together?
reviews and updates?
Well, yes and no. My background is in state and local public finance, so I have a degree in economics. I have public sector experience and private sector experience. We have done, as I said, during my work during the Great Recession, we did a lot of fiscal policy analysis in the town of Tewksbury, and we made some big changes there. Reading generally is considered to have some of the best fiscal policies in the state and is looked at as a leader by our peer communities. An example of that is the fact that we put about 5% into our capital plan annually. That's part of our operating costs. And a lot of other communities do that sort of in the fall with their free cash, and they put money into capital projects. We do this regularly. It prevents us from having to lose funds or have bigger expenses due to benign neglect. So those are good things. Being able to open up how we do our capital planning to the select board and to the public. Part of the reason for the retreat earlier is to get ahead of that. So our CFO meets twice annually with department heads to look at their capital planning. It's a 10-year plan. It moves, but everything's on it. What are we looking at? We have to replace this turf field, and we just bought this car. In 5 or 10 years, we're going to have to replace that truck or that piece of equipment. So we understand what's our fleet. We understand what's our capital equipment. We understand, with our enterprise funds, which sewer pump stations we're going to have to replace. So we have a robust project for that. Our staff are very detailed, but people want to have more ideas about what that is. So I think that's one thing. Another thing that I wanted to do is, and I've talked about this before, another community has it. I think it's kind of neat. They set aside $25,000, $50,000 for resident projects. So the residents can come forward and say, I think we need to do this thing, this project in my neighborhood. Maybe it's, we need park benches, or maybe it's, we need to build a pavilion, we need a shade structure, a pocket park. We need to do these small things, whatever it is. And they come forward and they present projects, and then the town can fund them with this seed money. And it helps with community engagement, and it helps people address needs, in their backyard. So I think that's a new thing that could be talked about as a fiscal project. There's going to be a debate this year about the CPA, and do we adopt that? And if we do adopt that, and there's that surcharge is added, and the reason one of the gateway issues that got me involved in public service was passing the CPA in Tewksbury. That was one of the first things I did. And then they asked me to run for office, and I said yes, and the rest is history. So if the CPA were to pass in Reading, does that inform or change how we fund annually capital projects? With a 1% surcharge, do we start thinking about, well, maybe it's not 5%, maybe it's 4.5%, and we take 0.5% off because some of that is going to be defrayed by the CPA. So that's a conversation to have. Mm-hmm. And it then starts to make the CPA a little bit of a neutral impact, even though there's a surcharge. So, how do we get to yes? Well, we can be creative and think it through. I don't know the answer to that question, but it's a conversation to have. So I think the CPA is a really interesting way of doing things. There's a big debate about, is now the time? The time has passed. We should have done it a long time ago. We passed it in Tewksbury in 2006. But we've been able to do so much with it because it sets aside things that when budgets are tight, Tewksbury's never passed an override. When budgets are tight, things that still need to happen can happen. We have a splash pad. We have, we renovated the entire town hall, which was not ADA accessible with the CPA. And we've done a lot of other projects. So those are some of the approaches I would take to fiscal policy, but I think you're right. We have a really good budget process. We have a really good fiscal process that we engage in. We should keep that process. And I would bring back level 1 budgeting to start with. And I would probably start this summer so that everybody knows, just like with the operations costs for recal, this is what we're asking for in level 1. What does the police department really need for level 1? What is, operations? The operations division needs software to make our website more accessible. Or we need to come up with another solution for that. That's not funded. And that is a state mandate next spring. So that's a problem we have to solve. So, we need to start talking about the level 1 budget stuff. So I thank you for the question.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you for that, Jane. So my question would be, over the past couple years, the select board isn't quite the school committee in the dynamic that is up here recently. So I've worked under Bob briefly during my time, then Fidel and Matt. And Fidel's style of handling potential controversial topics or surprises, like you had mentioned, that would bubble up, was to kind of reach out. I believe, I never asked him specifically, that he would reach out to individual board members before the meeting to make sure that, no surprises were coming up, how people are feeling, so we wouldn't embarrass ourselves during the meeting on things that could have been handled beforehand. So that was Fidel's kind of style with handling things. So I only bring that up because I love the way that Fidel handled that. And he's ruined me for all future town managers, maybe not you,
Maybe not.
or not, we'll see. But that kind of handling things opened my eyes to, a different way of navigating the difficult dynamic where we are your boss. And obviously it's very difficult to, try to say something to me right now without realizing, am I going to lose my job or something ridiculous? You know what I mean? So I understand that dynamic, but what is your managerial style for, I don't want to say managing us, but just trying to, handle this board dynamic as well as future board dynamics?
So a couple of things about that. If you say that process worked well for you from Fidel, happy to do it. If something is successful, no reason not to repeat it, right? So happy to make those phone calls. I try to keep the board updated on a weekly basis on the things that are going on, what's going on, and invite everybody to the table to have a conversation about where you're feeling or what's going on. But I can also be more proactive and reach out on the specific agenda items, the day before or whatever, as we get closer to meetings. I think on particularly topics that are challenging, what I've done in the past, like with MBTA communities, is we brought everybody in one by one to talk about what our plan was and get your feedback. What about this? What do you think about this? Does this answer your questions? Is this answering what you're hearing in the community? So that the board is fully informed. I would do the same thing for the budget process. My mentor as a manager was Richard Montori, and other town managers that I've worked for. But as a select board member, he did a great job. And one of the things he did is he brought us in for the budget conversation, difficult conversations. And he sat down with the staff and we went over and we could really dig in. The meeting still happens, but it doesn't have to be 4 hours to talk about the budget if you already know everything that's in the budget. And then the public benefits from the summary, right? We still put all the information out. So I think that can help make meetings a little bit faster because we put in the work outside the meeting. I think bringing the two members, if we have a split board, I've worked a lot on split boards, that's okay because the public benefits from the discourse and the commentary, that conversation that happens at the board. But decorum and civility matter at the table. And so if there are two folks that are on opposite sides of an issue, come into my office. Let's talk about what do you need? to get to be able to vote? What more information do you think you need? What's going to make you comfortable to say whatever your vote's going to be? You don't all have to be unanimous. What we understand is that we believe in the democratic process. We believe in, and we take the vote, the board has spoken. And even if I'm on the downside of a vote, I always understood that I believed the process. And so now we're going forward with whatever the board has decided. And sometimes you win and sometimes you lose. But are you respected? Did you get the information you needed? That's my role. Every board member is equal in my eyes. Everybody will get the same information, the same courtesy, the same access. And because you all have been elected and you deserve that.
Thanks, Jane. Did we want one more round of questions and that's it? Or how does I know, Karen, you have 45 questions, or 42 now. But I think it's, just to move things along, because it's a little past the thing. So pick your best question, not just you, but everybody.
Lightning round questions.
Yeah.
Yes or no questions? Do you have any yes or no questions?
I do not. Okay.
No pressure.
It's a lot of pressure.
I can move on to Melissa if you want to come back.
No, because I'm going to lose my train of thought. How do you handle accountability and performance of town staff? And how can we keep retaining the excellent staff we have?
Those are two questions.
Well,
That is
I
two
know.
questions.
I will allow it.
She
You're
has
good.
452 questions. So how do I manage accountability? They'll get a phone call. What's happening? What happened here? Can you explain to me how we got here? Generally, there's a good answer. But when there are issues, I sit down and I have a private conversation with that individual and say, this is what it's looking like for you. This is the look. This isn't the look you're looking for. This is not the management I'm looking for. This is not the performance or the cooperation or the collaboration, or you insert whatever the issue is that I'm looking for. I would like to see this. With my direct staff, we do a lot of goal setting. We're really clear. We did SMART goals this year. And I have to remind myself, I got to follow up with my staff on where they are with their SMART goals. But, and I did SMART goals too. And just so you can monitor progress. Are you getting where you want to be? And so, our goals, my goals for my staff was they need to have one personal goal. What did you want to do in your career? How can I help you reach your career goals? Because, just like when I was raising my children, I said I wasn't raising my children, I'm raising adults. I'm not just managing staff in these roles, I'm managing the future of the organization and the enterprise. We got to build a bench. Not a lot of people are lining up to work in public sector jobs. I don't know if you know that. But the bench is thin. And we have people here right now. So helping people grow in their careers, are they getting the training they're looking for? Where do they want to go? What is their career? I knew coming in the door that in 10 years I wanted to be a town manager. Not everybody's there. So, what do you want to do? Let's talk about it. So I think it's both sides, right? Making sure that you have the training and the support and that you're thinking about it. And it's okay to think about it. I know I'm doing this job right now, but I'd like to do this other job later. Well, how do we get there? Life is short, and you have to identify those goals, but that's how you build your bench. It's important to have succession plans. It's important that if number one person gets hit by a bus, by the MBTA bus downtown tomorrow, let's hope that doesn't happen, I hate that, who's gonna run the show? Because the town continues. You have to maintain an infinite mindset, right? 100 years from now, 500 years from now, there will be a community living here. And the way that we address that, it has to be thought of every single day. What are we doing with water rights? What's going to happen down the road? We have to think about that. How are we using land? We have to think about that. So the same thing is true with your staff. You have to plan and engage them, but you have to hold them accountable. And when there are mistakes, everybody makes mistakes. I make mistakes. I want people to be able to take risks. I want them to go out on a limb, because sometimes you get the great stuff there, but, be there to support them when they fall, but also, what's acceptable, what's not acceptable.
Thank you. You answered about 3 of my questions with that, so thank you.
Okay, great.
Only 40 to go. Melissa?
Thank you, Jane, for all of the answers you've given tonight. I actually want to ask this question because several residents asked it. So I know that you touched on this a little bit, but we got several questions from residents regarding the, elder services, and I know you touched on it a little bit with Karen, but, going forward, do you have a plan of how to address that funding in those shortfalls that we're seeing for elder and human services and those tangible needs? Besides, we've talked about it tonight, we're going to add cost-based programming, but like going forward with the recount building, do you have a plan besides just we need an override?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So one of the things that we're doing in the short term is, other than pay for classes, is we're going to run our fitness programs. That's a big issue right now through our recreation division, because we have access to more folks and we can help drive down that per class cost to our 60 plus community that are engaging. We have a lot of fitness programs. They're very popular and they're very important for wellness in the 60 plus community. We want to support that. So in the short term, we're going to run some of those through recreation. We've also had some conversations, and they'll be coming back to this board to talk about that a little bit, to have some of these instructors actually be like seasonal employees. And so if they're seasonal employees, they actually cost us less than charging whatever they want to charge as a vendor. And they can teach more. So they can actually, make a little bit more money. They can reach more people. They can do day classes. They can do evening classes. And it costs us less money. So that's one area that staff identified. So we talked about that actually today. So timely question. Other areas I'd like to touch on, a lot of our 60 plus community are just tremendous with the work that they've done in their life, the hobbies that they have, the skills that they have. And so one item is to have programming from them, doing some programming or leading an effort in a way. And then they can have free programming, reciprocal free programming. So if you offer something, you get something. And when budgets are tight and we can't get additional programming funds, and we know that externalities are driving up costs in homes that are on fixed incomes, what can we do together as a community? What can we come together as a community to do? Can we look inward or to each other to provide opportunities for enrichment and growth? Art classes, speech and debate, movie analysis. We're partnering with our library to bring more programs in. We're partnering with our already doing that. We're partnering with our food services department to replace some of our meal contracts that we funded through ARPA. And, Catherine Franzetti in the school department is just an outstanding individual with a tremendous amount of energy. And so she's helping us drive down the cost of our meals so we can still have communal meals. They can be less expensive or free, depending on what they are. And we aren't drawing on Elder and Human Services reserved funds to do that. We aren't drawing on, additional costs to burden our residents. So
Great. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Carlo?
We covered a lot. You covered a lot. We covered a lot. I just want to thank you for wanting the job.
I do want the job.
Number
if
one.
I didn't make that clear.
No, I that's been abundantly clear. And just to address, I guess, some concerns and questions from residents over the past month or so on, let's do a search, let's not do a search, why hire internal, why not hire internal, the pros and cons of either. And they're all valid questions, but for me, I hate to say this, but this is the third go around in 6 years to hire a town manager, and I consider that one of the biggest things that we do. We do a lot of things for this community, but hiring and keeping good town managers is the top of the list. So I just want to, thank you for applying. I think you're more than qualified, me personally, as an individual, and I look forward to the next steps. So no question.
Oh, so no question. Okay, because I was ready. Okay.
Karen Herrick.
No, thank you very much for answering all these questions, Jane. I don't have any more questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I have the last question.
Is my shocked face?
Yes. Jane, that's inside baseball here, Jane. I've been criticized of always wanting to get the last word in. I let somebody get the last word in outside the Pleasant Street Center the other night. I did not get credit for them doing that, nor should I. But for me, can you tell me about a time when you had to make a difficult administrative decision that impacted the community? And what was the outcome? And would you do anything differently here if it came up in Reading?
So as an elected official, I have.
And any, either elected or when you were on the select board or anything that sticks out to you?
So I'll give you a for instance when I was on school committee during the Great Recession. So I'm going back to the school committee because it was Great Recession, so it was really tough. It was 9 seat cuts in the middle of the year. We weren't going to be able to make our teacher contracts. Our budget was terrible, and Tewksbury had no reserves. I think we had when Richard Montori was hired in 2010. We had $500,000 in stabilization, and that was it. And this is a town that never passed an override. So we had we had terrible class sizes, the third worst in the state. So we had a lot of work to do, and I knew we couldn't lay off any teachers. But this story was about redistricting our schools. We had neighborhood schools like Reading does, but we bused everybody in town. Nobody walked. Some people walk, but generally it's a bust community. And we had to redistrict the schools in order to make the budget work. And that was painful. That was a lot of big meetings for the community. It was a lot of parents that didn't understand why we had to do this. Kids traveling a little bit longer on the bus, some were a little bit shorter. And what we did is instead of K to 5 in 4 schools, it was 2 schools were K to 2 and 2 schools were 3rd and 4th grade. And then they all came together in 5th and 6th grade in one school. So people like being in their neighborhood school, right? They want to be in the same school for 5 years, 6 years, K to 5. And that wasn't going to happen anymore. And that was very difficult. It was not my favorite thing to do. Parents were angry. And we spent a lot of time explaining it. And we worked very closely with our select board, going into very contentious public meetings. And my select board members were walking with us into those meetings. Was incredible. That was incredible. The support between the boards, because we all understood the stakes. I mean, this was bad times. It was the Great Recession. Towns were shedding teachers left and right. Class sizes were out of control. I had a child with an IEP at the time, and he's all grown up now and everything's great. But I was like, I know what happens when you increase class sizes. I know what the downside loss is, and I always work to protect the downside loss, right? That's one thing you'll learn about me. So it was not happy. I did not enjoy it, but we made the decision. And there were a lot of people who were unhappy about it. The kids were resilient. They did a great job. My daughter went through that same program with that same school system. It saved the budget another couple of years. And we made other changes over the years without overrides to get to where we need to be. It's not the level of service that Reading is accustomed to. It was doing the best we could with our back against the wall, and we explained that and empathized with it. And there were a lot of parents, and the community did not want to do an override, wouldn't even attempt it. So, yeah, I'm accustomed to making difficult decisions and explaining those decisions and engaging the community. Don't want to make those decisions, but when the time comes and we have to, explaining the consequences of what's going to happen with our budgets if we're not planning is important. I've been there. And so long-distance planning, engaging with other boards, being responsive to the public, that's important to avoid those kinds of things. Does that answer your question?
Of course. So yeah, the last word will go to you now. Is there anything else that you wanted to say to us or follow up on anything else before we get to our other agenda items here?
I have a closing statement.
Of course.
And then I will recuse myself from your conversation. Right, so tonight, we've discussed the Reading Balancing Act, if you will, advancing $158 million in capital projects while navigating tight operational budgets, impacting, as we talked a lot about tonight, our Elder and Human Services Department. My decade of experience here means I don't need a transition period. I'm already deep in the work of layering our debt as older obligations retire, protecting our AAA bond rating, ensuring our departments and services remain world-class. I'm asking for the opportunity to finish what we've started. I want to thank you for your time, and I look forward to the work ahead. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jane.
And now I shall recuse myself. You're in charge of this bit over here. Oh, thank you.
All righty. Moving on to 8:05, discussion of potential appointment of Jane Wellman as town manager. Board members, any thoughts? Melissa?
I knew it before going into tonight's interview process with Jane, but for me, it's a no-brainer. She's the right choice for Reading. Not only does she have the knowledge of this town for the last 10 years, she's got experience being on a school committee, a select board member, a town meeting member, and a moderator of her own town that most people don't bring to the table. And I think that if we don't jump on this, someone else is going to, and she is my choice for Reading.
Thanks, Melissa. Karen Rose Gillis.
So I agree with Melissa. I think in most situations, it's been said that not always is the number two going to be a good fit for number one. And I think in this instance, I'm very confident that I can say I think she's a perfect fit, basically because of all of her prior experience, being on boards, being on school committee, doing all that other stuff as part of her incrementally coming up to this point. So I think she transitioned really, really well. And I think that we're in a state right now that we cannot afford any learning curve for a new person. I think it's just it would be one thing if we hadn't voted on the projects yet and there'd be some time to get acclimated, but we're like in the midst of a lot of stuff. And I think that she's got the knowledge and the energy to move us forward to where we want to go.
Thanks, Karen. Karen or Carlo?
Karen, do you want to go? Do you want me to go?
Sure. So I'm going to say some of the same things I said before. And I do believe that Jane brings a lot of strengths to this process, and I think that was demonstrated this evening. And however, I am very, very concerned about the select board not breaking away from historical protocol and not doing a broader search. So I have not changed my mind about that. And I am still also concerned, as I made it one of my questions, about making, the select board does not appoint the assistant town manager. So since we're losing our assistant town manager, we are going to trust that if we hire Jane to be the town manager, that she is going to find an appropriate candidate. And I don't have a problem with trust and letting people stretch, but it is a concern for me if we, but I think we can all agree, I would not like to lose Jane in her service to the town, which has been very much appreciated.
Thanks, Karen. Carlo?
Sure. Well, I agree with my colleagues, and what I appreciated the most about tonight was how much she spoke about the long game and not just a short game, because that's what we need. And I'm not saying other town managers didn't have that, but that in and of itself, and knowing she's going to be uncomfortable sometimes, and she was uncomfortable at some times in her past, and just saying yes and figuring it out, because we all get anxious, we're all nervous. I never pictured myself in this position. This was not on my vision board, nor was going for 9 years on my vision board. So I can appreciate all that, but I really appreciate the long game the most. Thank you.
Thanks, Carlo. Yeah, for me, it's the same as what everyone else has mentioned. I know Jane was, not recently, but was a finalist for other town managers in other locations. And for obvious reason, I mean, she, as expected, completely crushed every question that we threw at her here, and surprised me on multiple things with her sayings that she had. I can't remember them now. I'm sure I'm going to watch back and look, but she had a couple, 2 or 3 different things that, really left an impression then. It's hard to be up here and not write things down and focus, but in the moment, I've brought up the small things before. It's always the small things that I pay attention to instead of the overarching large things. But I'll just give one other story with Jane regarding this, is that after the Article 14 discussion from a week or 2 ago, it seems like it's every day at this point, but she reached out to me and mentioned that, she wanted to see what my thoughts were for Article 14, going into town meeting, and trying to get the buy-in from the school committee as well. So she was going to reach out to Sean Brandt and see what he could do. And that's what I'm talking about. She's reaching out to the chairs of these boards, like, in knowing past history, she's still trying to keep us afloat at town meeting, to not devolve into whatever probably, unfortunately, is going to devolve in. But she's attempting to prevent that from happening by trying to get buy-in from significant stakeholders here in Reading. I don't discount, other people up here as well. It's any one of the 5 of us, including Karen as well. But I'm just laying the foundation here that she's doing something that I would have expected Fidel to do in the past. And she did that right out of the gate with me. And I said Fidel ruined me for everyone going forward. Fantastic guy, handling the dynamics here as well as within the town and doing everything else, trash pickup, all of that. But I don't want to say it's Fidel 2.0, because we all know how that unfortunately ended. Jane is her own strong, independent voice, and she absolutely will put me in my place whenever it's needed. And for that, not just for that alone, it's just, I think that she's going to excel here as town manager, second to none at this point. So that's kind of where I'm at as well. I don't know if anyone had any follow-ups to anything anyone else had said. Karen Rose Gillis?
I guess we have been contacted by residents about why we're kind of thinking of going outside the box a little bit and not hiring an outside search. And I want to acknowledge their comments, because I do think it's important. But I tend to also, as Jane had mentioned, I tend to think outside of the box as well. And I don't think that in this instance, I think going outside of the box of the normal way that we usually did it is not an unsafe choice. I think that it will pay out for years and years to come. And we know she wants to be a town manager, so it's not if she does, she won't. Do you know what I mean? She'd do well doing whatever she wants, but we know that that's her ultimate goal. And I think that I I respect her honesty tonight, and I think that, I think she'd be a perfect fit. So I just want to acknowledge that I know I thought long and hard and talked to a lot of people about the search process and saving the money, which to me is a big thing. But I do want to acknowledge that I feel comfortable going outside the box for this.
Thanks, Karen. Anybody else? Any follow-ups? Karen Herrick, nothing? You can just raise your hand. It's
I think
hard
I
to
already
see
spoke,
you.
but thank you.
Okay. All right. There's no vote on this particular aspect. That is somewhat, I think the next agenda item was only there if we didn't feel this process was appropriate or whatever. I think that's why, because discussion of potential next steps for hiring the town manager, I mean, the agenda it's already set for tomorrow for us to discuss and vote on appointment of Jane Wellman as town manager. So that's kind of the next step if we weren't okay with this, or we're still voting tomorrow regardless of how things transpired here today. So, did anyone else have anything to add with that before I open it up to public comment? I do agree with you, Karen Rose Gillis, that it's, sometimes and I know Jane she had something in there, I forget what the word is called, when you make a little quote preamble, like scenario, she had something in there kind of referencing like what you just did, that, you got to go out there and take risk. And I understand it's a town manager. It's obviously a pretty big risk, but in this instance, like usually when you hire number two, like if Jane was to hire somebody else, obviously she left in 2 years or something happened, she got hit by the MBTA bus or perhaps an asteroid that got mentioned. Why is everyone so?
Stop talking about it.
She brought it up, not me. But it just, she is beyond ready. So, I mean, there's some people that may or may not, who knows in the future, but for us to be a step skipper, this is a step skipper scenario to me. So.
Right, public comments.
So with that, I will open it up to public comment on anything we've discussed tonight regarding any of these scenarios. Is there anyone in the room first? 2 minutes, name and address. Carla? And then I'll open it up online. What? Oh, is someone timing? Okay, Maddie's timing.
Good evening. I'm Carla Nazaro, 64 Lawrence Road, Chair of the Killam School Building Committee. I am speaking with my knowledge of the Killam School Building Committee, but not for the committee. I have worked with Jane on the Killam School Building Committee for years now. She is my go-to person on the town side. I want to unequivocally express my passion for her to be our next town manager. She has helped just in terms of the committee. She has helped with streamlining the process for invoicing. Her work with procurement has helped us greatly in the past couple of months. She has been involved with our pre-qualification process for our filed subbidders, as well as our general contractors recently. She works with issues with abutters, with parking issues, with roadway issues, any intersection between the schools and the town. She's been invaluable. She leads from the front. She always has an answer. She is dedicated. She is pleasant to be around. And she has really enhanced what we have done on the committee, and I wholeheartedly endorse her for this position. I've watched her meetings with the Select Board. I've seen how she's engaged with you and helped progress your process along. And I am grateful for her for the work that she's done for the town, for our committee, and for the future. So thank you.
Thank you. Karen Janowski.
Thank you, Chris. Karen Janowski, Azalea Circle. I want to wholeheartedly agree with everything that you have said. One of the things that Karen Rose Gillis alluded to is that's the way we've always done it, is not always the best way. And even though there's historical policy, this is not the time. This is the time to think outside the box, to not go by what has been done in the past, because we know what we're getting with Jane. She was outstanding tonight. She blew me away. Her confidence, her willingness to, she knew every single question, and and if she doesn't know an answer, she will come back and say, I'll get back to you. But in my role as the chair of the Council on Aging, she has been such a collaborator and so willing to be open and available. And we've had a few difficult meetings lately, and she comes with a sense of humor and a willingness to help just make things more comfortable for everyone. And I was blown away by her knowledge about every aspect, everything that you threw at her. And if you brought in an outside person, that would be they'd need probably 6, 9, 12 months to get to where Jane is. And so let's throw out the old process. It's not applicable here. It would be a waste of the town's resources, money, and especially our time. We need somebody who can pick up right where she is with the knowledge that she has. And I'm so glad that the vote seems to be wholeheartedly in support of Jane. And I appreciate all that you've done. Thank you.
Thank you. Ed? 2 minutes, name and address.
Hi, Ed Ross, Kensington Ave. I was one of the people that was kind of behind having a process. I think there's there's a lot of merit to be able to do that. And I'm by far a charter member of Jane's fan club. But that being said, I really think, we would be incredibly fortunate to have Jane as a town manager. Whether we go through a process or not, more than likely, you're not going to find someone that's going to be able to impact Jane right away. My comment is more just for the board. Realize how lucky we are to be in this position. And treat it appropriately going forward in all communications back and forth. I think this could be a turning point for the board and should be. How we got here, we're here. And as someone that has advocated to getting a little bit of transparency as far as how we got there, I still would like that at some point in time, but either way, we're at a point now with Jane that this is she is to Carla's point, to Karen's point, to all that's happened with the board. She's a perfect fit, but again, I think the main thing I'd stress is just to make sure that the board handles this with care. Thank you.
Thanks, Ed. Anybody else in the room? Maddie, anybody online? We'll give them a sec to raise hands. I don't see anyone, but.
I don't see any either.
All right, once, twice, 3 times. So that's that. Karen Rose Gillis, another motion.
Motion to adjourn?
Yes.
Second.
You're so happy.
I never get to do that.
All right, so roll call vote. Karen Herrick,
Yes.
Karen Rose Gillis, Melissa Murphy,
Yes.
Carla Bacci,
Yes.
and Chris Haley, yes. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.